The morning started like any other morning on Earth. People went to work. Children went to school. Families sat together for breakfast. Nobody knew that in a few hours, everything would change forever. It was the year 2247. Humans had built cities on Mars. They had made homes on the moons of Jupiter. They had sent ships to mine rocks in the asteroid belt. Humans were proud of what they had done. They believed they were alone in the universe. They were wrong. The first ship appeared over New York City at exactly 9 in the morning. It was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It blocked out the sun and cast a shadow over the entire city. People stopped on the streets and looked up. Some took pictures. Some laughed nervously. Nobody ran. They did not know they should be afraid. Then the ship fired. A beam of bright blue light shot down from the ship and hit the center of the city. The light was so bright that people miles away had to cover their eyes. When they looked again, New York was gone. Millions of people died in less than 1 second. Where the great city once stood, there was only a smoking crater. Before anyone could understand what had happened, more ships appeared. They came over London. They came over Tokyo. They came over Sydney and Paris and Moscow. One by one, the great cities of Earth burned. The alien ships moved with terrible speed, and their weapons never missed. The attacks lasted for 3 days. Humans tried to fight back. They sent their best jets and their strongest missiles. Nothing worked. The alien weapons destroyed everything humans sent against them. It was like throwing rocks at a tank. When the attacks finally stopped, 2 billion people were dead. Half of Earth's cities were ruins. The survivors hid in basements and tunnels and forests, waiting for the end. Then the aliens sent their message. It played on every screen, every radio, every device that still worked. The message was simple and cold. You are now subjects of Vexari Empire. Resistance is extinction. That was how humans learned the name of their enemy. The Vexari, an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. To them, Earth was just another planet to add to their collection. Humans were just another species to enslave. General Catherine Morrison heard the message while standing in the ruins of the United Nations building. She was 53 years old. She had served in the military for 30 years, but she had never seen real war until 3 days ago. Now she was one of the highest-ranking officers still alive, which meant she was in charge of whatever was left of Earth's defense. Ash fell around her like gray snow. The air smelled like smoke and death. Catherine looked at the destruction and felt something cold settle in her heart. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was rage, pure and hot and endless. Her aide, Lieutenant Daniel Cruz, walked up to her. He was young, maybe 25, with dirt on his face and blood on his uniform. He held a small computer tablet in his shaking hands. "General," he said, "the aliens are demanding our complete surrender. They want an answer within 24 hours. Catherine did not reply. She was looking up at the massive alien ship that floated over the Atlantic Ocean. It was so big that she could see it even from here, hundreds of miles away. Its shadow covered entire countries. "General?" Daniel said again. "What should we tell them?" Catherine thought about her daughter, Lisa, 22 years old. Smart and kind and full of life. She had been in Chicago when the aliens attacked. There was nothing left of Chicago now. She thought about her husband, Christopher. He had been visiting Denver for a business meeting. The last message she got from him was a text saying he loved her. That was 2 days ago. She did not know if he was alive or dead. Catherine turned to Daniel. Her eyes were dry. She had no more tears left. "Get me a channel to their flagship," she said. "I want to talk to whoever is in charge." Daniel looked surprised but did not argue. He worked on his tablet for a few minutes, then nodded. You are connected, General. A screen flickered to life in front of Catherine. On it was a face she had never seen before. The alien had green scales like a snake. Its eyes were yellow with black slits. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "I am Commander Vareth of the Vexery Empire," it said. "Do you speak for your species?" Catherine stood straight. Her uniform was torn and covered in blood and dust, but she did not care. "I am General Catherine Morrison of Earth's Defense Forces. I speak for humanity." The alien made a strange clicking sound that might have been a laugh. "You wish to discuss the terms of your surrender?" "No," Catherine said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I want you to remember this moment. Remember my face. Remember my voice." The alien tilted its head, confused. "Why would I remember a primitive from a conquered world?" Catherine took a step closer to the screen. "Because you struck Earth first. You killed our people. You burned our cities. And now I am making you a promise. We are coming for you." Commander Vareth laughed again, louder this time. "You have nothing. Your ships are destroyed. Your armies are scattered. You are primitives with primitive weapons." "We have something you do not understand," Catherine replied. "We have rage. Every human who survived your attack will spend the rest of their life working toward one goal: the destruction of your empire. Maybe it will take 10 years. Maybe it will take 100 years. But we will find you. We will reach you. And we will make you pay for what you did here." The alien stopped laughing. For just a moment, something flickered in its yellow eyes. It was not fear, not yet. But it was uncertainty. "Your species is amusing," Commander Vareth said. "Enjoy your fantasy of revenge. In a few generations, your children will serve us like all the others." Catherine smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Remember my face," she said again. "Remember what I told you today. Because I keep my promises." She ended the transmission with a single press of a button. Daniel Cruz stood beside her, his face pale. "General," he whispered, "how can we possibly fight them? They destroyed us in 3 days." Catherine watched the alien ship through the broken windows. The sun was setting behind it, painting the sky red and orange. It looked like the whole world was on fire. "We learn," she said. "We study their technology. We find their weaknesses. We build new weapons, better weapons. We train our children and their children after them. That could take decades," Daniel said. "Then it takes decades." Catherine turned to face him. "They think we are broken. They think we will submit. They do not understand humans at all. We do not give up. We do not forgive. And we never forget." She looked back at the burning sky one last time. "One day, we will bring this fire to them. I swear it on everyone we lost. I swear it on the ashes of our cities. We will have our revenge." Daniel looked at the old general, at the fire in her eyes, at the cold determination in her voice. And for the first time since the attacks began, he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. 20 years passed after the Vexery attack on Earth. To the aliens, it seemed like humanity had accepted its fate. Humans worked in the mines the Vexery built. They labored in the factories. They paid their taxes and followed the rules. They kept their heads down and did not cause trouble. The Vexery had seen this pattern many times before. First, the conquered species would fight back. Then they would realize they could not win. Then they would give up and become obedient servants of the Empire. It had happened on 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. The Vexery believed it had happened on Earth too. They were very, very wrong. Beneath the Rocky Mountains, in tunnels that went miles underground, humans were working day and night. The Vexery did not know about these tunnels. They had no idea that the largest secret project in human History was happening right under their feet. Dr. Samuel Grant was the leader of the science team. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had not slept more than 4 hours a night for the past 10 years. None of his team had. They were too busy changing the future. The new engine is ready for testing, Samuel told the group of leaders gathered in the main chamber. There were scientists, military officers, and resistance leaders from all over the world. And standing at the front, older now, but still strong, was General Catherine Morrison. She was 73 years old. Her hair had turned white, and her face had more lines. But her eyes still held the same fire they had held 20 years ago when she made her promise to the Viceroy commander. "Show me," Catherine said. Samuel led them to a large underground hangar. Inside was something that made everyone stop and stare. It was a ship, but not like any ship humans had built before. It was sleek and beautiful, with smooth curves and a dark surface that seemed to absorb light. "We captured pieces of Vexery technology after the invasion," Samuel explained. "Crashed ships, abandoned equipment, things they threw away. We studied everything. We took it apart and learned how it worked. Then we made it better." Catherine walked around the ship, running her hand along its surface. "How much better?" Samuel smiled for the first time in weeks. "This ship is faster than anything the Vexery have. Our weapons hit harder. And we found the weakness in their shields. We can break through their defenses." One of the military officers, Commander Patricia Cole, stepped forward. She was 42 years old and had been training pilots in secret for 15 years. "How many ships can we build?" "With our current resources, about 300 in the next year," Samuel replied. "We have factories hidden on Mars, Europa, and Titan. The Vexery inspect the surface facilities, but never look too deep. They are too confident. They think we are just primitive apes digging in the dirt." Catherine nodded slowly. She remembered the alien commander's words from 20 years ago. Primitives, he had called them. Amusing. "What about our people?" she asked. "Are they ready to fight?" Patricia Cole answered this question. "General, I have been training pilots since the day after the invasion. The first class were children who watched their parents die. They are adults now, and they are the best pilots humanity has ever produced. They fly simulators 18 hours a day. They dream about this war. They are more than ready." Catherine felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride. These young people had grown up in the shadow of defeat, but they had not given up. They had trained and waited and prepared, just like she had asked them to, on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Engineer Nathan Brooks was perfecting the drive systems that would carry human ships across the stars. He was a quiet man who spoke more to machines than to people. But his work would make the impossible possible. On Titan, weapons specialist Angela Davis tested new warheads in the frozen valleys far from Vexery eyes. Each explosion was carefully measured and recorded. Each test brought them closer to weapons that could crack a Vexery battleship in half. On Mars, hidden bases trained soldiers for ground combat. They learned to fight in any environment, in any gravity, against any enemy. They'd practiced until their skills were perfect. And in orbit around Earth, hidden by technology the Vexery could not detect, humanity built its fleet. Ship after ship, weapon after weapon, dream after dream. All waiting for the day they would finally be used. Catherine Morrison called a meeting of all the resistance leaders. They gathered in the underground command center, their faces lit by the glow of screens showing fleet positions and production numbers. 20 years ago, I made a promise, Catherine said. I told the Vexery that we would come for them. Some of you were children then. Some of you were not even born. But you all know what they did to us. You all carry the memory of that day. She paused and looked at each face in the room. Scientists and soldiers. Old people who remembered the world before, and young people who only knew life under occupation. all of them united by one purpose. The time for hiding is almost over, Catherine continued. In 6 months, we launch Operation Retribution. We will strike hard and fast. We will show the galaxy that humanity is not a species that can be conquered. Daniel Cruz was there too. He was in his 40s now, still serving at Catherine's side after all these years. General, the Vexri have held this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They have conquered hundreds of species. Are you sure we can beat them? Catherine smiled. It was the same cold smile she had given the alien commander 2 decades ago. The Vexri have never faced anything like us. They conquer through fear. They break spirits and crush hope. But they could not break us. They could not crush our hope. She turned to the main screen, which showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Vexri territory. Blue dots marked human positions. The red dots covered most of the map. The blue dots were tiny in comparison. They think size and numbers mean everything, Catherine said. They think their empire is too big to fail. But empires built on cruelty always fall. And we are going to push them over. She pressed a button, and her voice went out to every hidden base, every secret factory, every training camp throughout the solar system. This is General Morrison. For 20 years, we have worked in silence. We have built our strength while our enemies grew lazy and confident. Now the silence ends. Prepare yourselves. Train harder. Work faster. In 6 months, we take back our future. The message spread through the resistance like fire. Pilots hugged each other and cried. Engineers worked through the night with new energy. Soldiers sharpened their weapons and checked their armor. Across the solar system, 15 billion humans who had been waiting and hoping and preparing received the same message. The day they had dreamed about was finally coming. Catherine Morrison stood alone in her quarters that night. She looked at a photograph of her daughter Lisa, forever young, forever smiling. Next to it was a picture of her husband Christopher. His body had been found in the ruins of Denver, years after the attack. I told them I would keep my promise, she whispered to the photographs. And I will. We are coming for them. All of us. And they will never hurt anyone again. Outside her window, stars filled the dark sky. Somewhere out there, the Vexri Empire waited, confident in its power. They had no idea what was coming. The Vexri outpost on the planet called Kepler 442b was a boring assignment. Nothing ever happened there. The soldiers spent their days playing games and complaining about the food. The officers wrote reports that nobody read. It had been this way for 100 years. That changed on a quiet morning, when 12 human ships appeared out of nowhere. Captain Benjamin Hayes sat in the command chair of the lead vessel. He was 35 years old, born 3 years after the invasion of Earth. He had never known a world where humans were free. His entire life had been preparation for this moment. All ships, report status, he said into his communicator. 11 voices answered, each one confirming they were ready. These pilots had trained together for 10 years. They knew each other's movements without speaking. They were the first strike force of humanity's revenge. Benjamin looked at the Vexri outpost through his window. 4 warships floated in orbit around the planet. On the surface, there was a military base with maybe 2,000 soldiers. The Vexri flag flew over everything, the symbol of an empire that thought it could never be challenged. Remember what they did to Earth, Benjamin said quietly. Remember the cities they burned. Remember the people they killed. Today, we start paying them back. He took a deep breath. All ships, weapons hot. Attack formation Delta. No mercy. The 12 human ships moved as one. They were faster than anything the Vexri had ever seen. Before the alien commanders could even understand what was happening, the first warship exploded in a ball of orange fire. The second ship tried to raise its shields. The human weapons cut through them like paper. The third ship attempted to flee. It did not get far. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, all 4 Vexery warships were destroyed. The ground base was in ruins. Human soldiers landed on the planet and raised Earth's flag where the Vexery banner had once stood. Benjamin Hayes looked at the flag and felt tears on his face. It was the first time human colors had flown over an alien world. It would not be the last dot. When the Vexery High Command received word of the attack, they did not believe it at first. Humans? Impossible. Humans were primitives who dug in mines and worked in factories. They did not have ships. They did not have weapons, but the reports kept coming. The outpost at Kepler 442b was gone. Human ships had been spotted in 3 other systems. Something was very wrong. The Vexery response was quick and confident. They sent 50 warships to crush this little rebellion. 50 warships that had conquered entire civilizations. 50 warships that had never lost a battle. Commander Patricia Cole was waiting for them. She commanded 40 human vessels, a smaller force than the Vexery. But size was not everything. Patricia had studied the Vexery for 20 years. She knew how they thought. She knew how they fought. And she knew exactly how to beat them. They will come in standard formation, she told her pilots before the battle. 3 lines, with the command ship in the center of the back row. They have used the same tactics for 1,000 years because they have never needed to change. That is their weakness. Her pilots listened carefully. They were young, most of them under 30. But they had fire in their eyes and hate in their hearts. Every single one of them had lost someone to the Vexery. We will not fight like they expect, Patricia continued. We hit hard. We move fast. We target the command ship first. Cut off the head, and the body dies. The battle began near Proxima Station, an old human colony that the Vexery had turned into a mining operation. The alien ships arrived in perfect formation, just like Patricia had predicted. They moved with the confidence of conquerors who had never known defeat. Patricia smiled. They were about to learn something new. All wings, attack pattern Delta, she ordered. Hit the command ship. Everything you have, now. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving so fast the Vexery sensors could barely track them. The aliens tried to adjust their formation, but they were too slow. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this. The first wave of human ships punched through the Vexery lines like a knife through cloth. The second wave hit the command ship from 3 different angles. The third wave finished the job. When the Vexery command ship exploded, the rest of their fleet fell into chaos. Without orders from their leaders, the alien captains did not know what to do. Some tried to retreat. Some tried to fight. None of them succeeded. The Battle of Proxima Station lasted 2 hours. When it ended, 38 Vexery ships were scattered across space as burning wreckage. Patricia Cole had lost 8 vessels, and every loss hurt. But she had one dot. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humans had defeated a Vexery fleet. Not just defeated them, but destroyed them completely. It seemed impossible, but the proof was floating in space around Proxima Station. On 100 conquered worlds, slaves who had given up hope began to whisper. On Vexery Prime, the capital of the Empire, leaders argued and blamed each other. And on Earth, people looked up at the sky with new eyes. General Catherine Morrison appeared in a broadcast that reached every corner of known space. The Vexery tried to block it, but human technology was better now. The message got through. Catherine was 93 years old. She sat in a chair because standing was difficult. Her voice was softer than it had been 20 years ago, but her words carried the same fire. To the Vexery Empire, she said, 20 years ago, you attacked my world. You killed billions of my people. You believed us broken. You believed us defeated. You were wrong. She leaned forward, her eyes bright and fierce. For 20 years, we have planned. We have built. We have waited. Now we are coming. Not for peace. Not for negotiation. We are coming to end your empire forever. The broadcast showed images of the human fleet, hundreds of ships that the Vexery had never known existed. It showed human soldiers training, human factories producing weapons, human children being taught that freedom was worth fighting for. Every world you rule will be freed, Catherine continued. Every ship you command will be destroyed. Every soldier you send against us will fall. This is not war. This is justice. And justice cannot be stopped. She paused and looked directly into the camera. Somewhere, she knew, the alien commander who had laughed at her 20 years ago was watching. I told you to remember my face, she said softly. I told you to remember my promise. I hope you remember now. Because we are coming, and nothing in this galaxy will stop us. The transmission ended. Across the Veggery Empire, conquered species began to rise up. They had been beaten down for centuries, all hope crushed out of them. But now they saw something they had never seen before. They saw the conquerors being conquered. If the humans could do it, maybe they could too. On a small planet in the outer reaches of the Empire, a group of aliens who had been slaves for 300 years overpowered their guards and took control of a Vexery weapons depot. They sent a message to the human fleet. We saw your broadcast. We want to help. Tell us what to do. Patricia Cole received the message and smiled. This was bigger than revenge now. This was the beginning of something new. She sent back a simple reply. Welcome to the fight. The human advance across the galaxy was faster than anyone had expected. In the first year, they freed 12 star systems. In the second year, they freed 35 more. The Vexery Empire, which had ruled for thousands of years, was crumbling like a sandcastle in a storm. General Catherine Morrison directed the campaign from her command ship, the carrier called Retribution. It was the largest vessel in the human fleet, a symbol of everything humanity had built during their years of silent preparation. Catherine was 93 years old now, and her body was failing her. She needed help to walk. Her hands shook when she tried to hold things. The doctors told her she should rest, that she had done enough. She ignored them. She had made a promise, and she would see it through. The war room on the Retribution was always busy. Screens covered every wall, showing troop movements, fleet positions, and battle reports. Officers rushed back and forth, carrying messages and updating plans. In the middle of it all sat Catherine, watching everything with sharp eyes that age had not dimmed. Admiral Gregory Palmer, her second in command, approached with a tablet showing the latest updates. He was 60 years old, a serious man who rarely smiled. We have taken the Corvus system, he reported. Enemy losses were heavy. Our losses were acceptable. Catherine nodded. Acceptable. That is a cold word for people dying. Gregory lowered his head. I know, General. But we are winning. Every day, we get closer to their home world. It was true. The human advance had pushed deep into Vexery territory. Planets that had been under alien rule for centuries were now free. Species that had forgotten what freedom meant were learning it again. But victory came with a terrible price. Captain Benjamin Hayes, who had led the first strike against the Vexery, died at the Battle of Corvus Prime. His ship was badly damaged, his weapons empty, and a Vexery supercarrier was about to destroy 3 transport ships full of refugees. Benjamin did not hesitate. He aimed his ship at the supercarrier and pushed the engines to full power. The collision destroyed both vessels. 2,000 refugees survived because one man gave his life. When Catherine heard the news, she sat alone in her quarters for an hour. Benjamin had been like a son to her. She had watched him grow from a scared child into a brave captain. And now he was gone. She added his name to a list she kept in her desk. It was a long list, written in her own handwriting. Every name was someone who had died in this war. Someone who had given everything so that others could be free. The list grew longer every day. Nathan Brooks, the engineer who had helped build the fleet, was captured during a raid on a Visury supply station. The aliens tortured him for information, but he never spoke. They executed him after 3 days. Hundreds of young pilots died in battles that never made the news. Thousands of soldiers fell on planets whose names most people would never know. Each one was a person with hopes and dreams and families. Each one was a sacrifice on the altar of freedom. Catherine visited the wounded in the medical bays. She walked through the rows of beds, speaking to each person, thanking them for their service. Some of them would recover. Some of them would not. A young woman with burns covering half her face grabbed Catherine's hand. "General," she whispered, "did we win? Is it over?" Catherine squeezed her hand gently. "Not yet. But soon. Rest now. You have done your part." The young woman smiled and closed her eyes. She died 2 hours later. Catherine added another name to her list. Gregory Palmer found her sitting in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He stood beside her in silence for a moment before speaking. "General, we could negotiate from a position of strength now. The Vexury have offered to discuss peace terms. We could end this war, save lives on both sides." Catherine did not look away from the stars. "Do you know what they do to the species they conquer, Gregory? They do not just take their freedom. They take their hope. They crush them until they forget they ever had spirits. Until they become nothing but tools." She turned to face him. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they still burned with determination. "You do not negotiate with that kind of evil. You do not make deals with it. You destroy it completely, so it can never hurt anyone again." Gregory nodded slowly. "The cost is high, General. I know." Catherine's voice was heavy with grief. "I know exactly what this war costs. I carry every name with me, every face, every story. But if we stop now, their sacrifices mean nothing. If we stop now, the Vexury will rebuild. They will come back stronger. They will enslave more worlds." She stood up, and for a moment she looked like the young general who had made her promise in the ruins of New York 40 years ago. "We finish this. We end them. Not for revenge. For the future." Patricia Cole led the assault on the Vexury shipyards at Desser Station. It was the largest production facility in the Empire, building hundreds of warships every year. Taking it out would cripple the enemy's ability to fight. The battle was brutal. The Vexury defended their shipyard with everything they had. Ships exploded like fireworks in the dark of space. Laser fire painted bright lines across the stars. Patricia lost half her force. Her own ship was hit twice, and fires burned on 3 decks. But she pushed forward, leading her pilots through the enemy lines until they reached the shipyard's core. "All ships, target the reactor," she commanded. "One shot. Make it count." 12 ships fired at the same time. The reactor exploded, and the explosion spread through the entire station. When it was over, 30% of the Vexury Empire's production capacity was gone. Angela Davis coordinated bombing campaigns that destroyed enemy supply lines. Without food and fuel, Vexury armies on distant worlds began to starve. Without weapons and ships, their commanders could not replace what they lost in battle. And across the galaxy, the species that had lived under Vexury rule for generations began to rise up. They attacked their occupiers with anything they could find. They sabotaged factories. They blocked roads. They did not have human ships or human weapons, but they had courage. The humans had given them that. The Vexury Empire was dying. Everyone could see it. The only question was how long it would take, On Vexry Prime, the imperial capital, Emperor Vexer the 17th demanded answers from his advisors. How had this happened? How had primitive apes from a backwater planet brought his empire to its knees? The advisors had no answers. They had underestimated humans. They had mistaken quiet for weakness. They had believed that species broke when you conquered them. They had never met a species that used defeat as fuel for victory. In the command room of the Retribution, Catherine Morrison studied the map of the galaxy. Almost half of it was blue now, marking human-controlled or liberated space. The red was shrinking every day. Prepare the final fleet, she ordered. We move on Vexry Prime in 3 months. Gregory Palmer looked worried. That is their home world, General. They will fight to the last soldier. Catherine smiled, and there was something ancient and tired in that smile. I am counting on it. We end this war where it should end, at the heart of their empire, and we make sure they can never threaten anyone again. She looked at the photograph of her daughter that she kept on her desk. Lisa smiled back at her, forever young, forever innocent. We are almost there, Catherine whispered. Almost. The Battle of Vexry Prime was the largest battle in the history of the galaxy. The human fleet numbered over 2,000 ships, gathered from every corner of liberated space. Beside them flew vessels from a dozen species that had joined the fight. Against their former masters, against them stood the entire remaining strength of the Vexry Empire. 800 warships, countless defense platforms, and millions of soldiers on the planet below. The aliens knew this was their last stand. If they lost here, they lost everything. General Catherine Morrison sat in her command chair on the bridge of the Retribution. She was 95 years old, and she needed machines to help her breathe. Her hands were too weak to hold anything, but her mind was still sharp, and her will was still iron. All ships, report status, she said. Her voice was quiet, but every word was carried across the fleet. Admiral Gregory Palmer stood beside her. Patricia Cole commanded the fighter squadrons from her own vessel. Officers and soldiers from Earth and 100 other worlds waited for the order. That would begin the final battle. Catherine looked at the planet on the screen before her. Vexry Prime was beautiful in a strange way, with purple oceans and silver clouds. Billions of Vexry lived there, along with millions of slaves from conquered species. It was the heart of an empire that had caused more suffering than any other in history. Today, that empire would end. All ships, Catherine said. 44 years ago, the Vexry came to our world. They burned our cities. They killed our families. They expected us to bow down and accept our fate as slaves. She paused, letting the silence stretch across the fleet. Thousands of people listened to her words, each one carrying their own memories, their own losses, their own reasons for being here. We did not bow. We did not break. We waited, we learned, we built, and now we stand at the gates of their home, not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as free people demanding justice. Her voice grew stronger, fed by decades of determination. Today, we end this war. Today, we make sure that no empire will ever believe it can enslave the weak without consequence. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. She lifted her hand, the gesture taking all her remaining strength. For Earth, for everyone we lost. For the future, attack. The battle began. Human ships surged forward in waves, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. Vexry defense platforms exploded one after another. The alien fleet moved to intercept, and the two forces collided in a storm of fire and light. Patricia Cole led her fighters into the heart of the enemy formation. She was 62 years old, too old for combat duty according to regulations. She had ignored the regulations. This was the moment she had trained her entire life for. Stay tight, stay focused, She called to her pilots. "We have trained for this. We are ready for this. Follow me." Her squadron cut through the Vexery lines like a blade through silk. Behind them, larger ships pounded the enemy with heavy weapons. The Vexery fought with the desperation of cornered animals. But it was not enough. Admiral Gregory Palmer commanded the Western assault, pushing through the orbital defenses with methodical precision. He had lost many friends in this war. He had watched young people die under his command. Every enemy ship he destroyed felt like a payment toward a debt that could never be fully repaid. The battle lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of constant fighting, of ships exploding, of heroes dying. 3 weeks of pushing forward, inch by inch, toward the ultimate goal. When the orbital defenses finally fell, human soldiers landed on Vexery Prime for the first time. They fought through the streets of the capital city, past monuments to emperors who had ruled for millennia, past statues of commanders who had conquered countless worlds. Catherine Morrison watched everything from her ship. She wanted to be down there with her troops, but her body would not allow it. So she watched and waited and directed, counting down the hours until the end. When the Imperial Palace was surrounded, she made a decision. "Prepare a shuttle," she told Gregory. "I am going down." Gregory looked alarmed. "General, your condition." The doctor said any stress could be fatal. Catherine smiled weakly. "I started this war with a promise. I intend to finish it in person. Help me to the shuttle, Gregory." "That is an order." The shuttle landed in front of the Imperial Palace as the sun was setting. Catherine was carried out on a floating chair, accompanied by a squad of her best soldiers. She looked up at the massive building where Vexery emperors had ruled for generations. The doors were open. Inside, the last of the Imperial Guard had surrendered. Only the Emperor remained, waiting in his throne room. Catherine was carried through the empty halls, past paintings of famous battles and displays of treasures taken from conquered worlds. She saw objects from Earth among them, stolen during the invasion. She did not stop. She kept moving forward until she reached the throne room. Emperor Vexer XVII sat on his throne, dressed in his finest robes. He was old for a Vexery, with faded scales and cloudy eyes. He watched the human general approach with an expression that mixed defiance with resignation. "So," the Emperor said, "the primitive comes to claim her prize." Catherine stopped her chair a few feet from the throne. She studied the alien who had ordered the destruction of her world, who had killed her daughter and her husband and billions of others. "I am not here for prizes," she said quietly. "I am here to end what you started." The Emperor leaned forward. "You have won. What do you want? Our surrender? Our submission? Name your terms." Catherine was silent for a long moment. She thought about everyone she had lost. She thought about the rage that had kept her alive for 44 years. She thought about the list of names in her desk, all the people who had died to bring her to this moment. "I want you to understand something," she finally said. "When you attacked Earth, you thought you were dealing with just another primitive species. You thought we would break like all the others. You were wrong." She met his yellow eyes with her own. "And now your empire is ashes. Your fleet is destroyed. Your people will spend generations rebuilding what your arrogance destroyed." The Emperor spread his hands. "Will you exterminate us then? Kill us all, as we tried to kill your kind?" Catherine shook her head slowly. "No, that is what you would do. That is what you have done to countless species across the galaxy. But we are not you. We are better than you." She gestured to one of her officers, who stepped forward with a document. "The Vexery Empire is dissolved. Your people will be given the choice to join the new Federation of Free Worlds as equals, with full rights and representation. Your military will be disbanded. Your weapons will be destroyed." The Emperor looked confused. "You show us mercy? After everything we did?" Not mercy, Catherine corrected. Justice. We will build something better than your empire ever was. A community of free peoples, bound by law and cooperation instead of conquest. Your people can be part of that if they choose. She paused, and her voice hardened. But you personally, Emperor, will stand trial for your crimes against humanity and every species you enslaved. Justice will be done. Victims will be heard. And the galaxy will see that no one is above the law. The Emperor lowered his head. For the first time in his long life, he had no response. Catherine turned her chair around and began to leave the throne room. At the door, she stopped and looked back one last time. I made you a promise 44 years ago, she said. I told you to remember my face. I told you we were coming. I kept that promise. And I kept one thing more important than revenge. What is that? The Emperor asked. My humanity, Catherine replied. Your cruelty did not make us cruel. Your hatred did not make us hateful. We fought you because we had to. We defeated you because we could. But we will not become what we fought against. That is what makes us different from you. That is why we won. She left the throne room and never looked back. 1 year later, General Catherine Morrison died peacefully in her sleep on a restored Earth. She was 96 years old. She had lived to see the end of the war and the beginning of the new Federation. At her funeral, representatives from 100 species came to pay their respects. Humans stood beside former enemies and former slaves, united in their grief and their gratitude. Patricia Cole, now an admiral, gave the eulogy. She promised us revenge, Patricia said. But she gave us something better. She gave us justice. She showed us that we could fight without losing ourselves. She taught us that the true measure of strength is not how much you can destroy, but how much you can build. A century later, statues of General Catherine Morrison stood on 1,000 worlds. The Federation she helped create stretched across the galaxy. A union of free peoples dedicated to peace and cooperation. The Vexery, humbled and reformed, worked alongside their former victims to build a better future. It was not easy, and old wounds took a long time to heal. But slowly, generation by generation, the galaxy became a better place. And on Earth, beautiful and green and full of life, children learned the story of the day the sky burned. They learned about the woman who stood in the ashes and made a promise. They learned how she kept that. The story always ended the same way, with Catherine Morrison's words to the Emperor, spoken in the throne room as the sun set on an ancient empire. Your cruelty did not make us cruel. Your hatred did not make us hateful. That is what makes us different from you. That is W.